r/ask Reddit. What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. Weekend rule: no matter the time of day, always answer your barracks room door with a beer in your hand. True story, man. I'm not even a big drinker, but I always kept a full flask at hand any time after evening formation, and especially on weekend mornings when duties would magically disappear and need a replacement. I'm a flight attendant. Rule is we can't drink 8 hours before our shift. Sometimes the company will call after you've just got done working to do more flying as they don't have anyone else. Or we might have an extra long overnight, as in get into whichever city say around 11 PM Monday and won't leave until 6 AM Wednesday. Sometimes they'll call us to work some short flights on that Tuesday we aren't working. You just answer the phone and say you just had a drink and don't have to work. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, the entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our R was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. What kind of power-crazed R does that? If you violated the dress code policy, you had to wear these really big grey sweatpants or sweatshirts that said DCV in big orange letters. Dress code violation. It became a thing to get caught because they were apparently really comfortable. When the admin finally caught on that people were trying to get them on purpose, they changed it so that you got in school suspension. Jokes on them for that too. Lots of kids preferred that over being in class. My school did the same thing. Only the shirt said I broke the school dress code. The senior class made it into a competition to see who could have the most outrageous violation. The school finally gave up on it after guys started showing up in halter tops and Daisy Dukes. Well, it wasn't a school-wide policy, but I had a super beachy French teacher who would constantly hand out detentions for things as inconsequential as walking to the trash can to throw away a piece of paper. She absolutely could not deal with the fact that we periodically might need to actually leave our chairs for a perfectly valid reason. One day she locked herself out of the classroom and nobody would let her back in. Sorry, we aren't allowed to get out of our seats. She had to get the janitor. LOL. If she had been the German teacher, you would have gotten extra credit for following instructions to the letter. You do not get extra credit for doing what you are supposed to do. There was rule they put in place my freshman year of high school, that if you arrived late, that is, after first bell, you couldn't park in the parking lot. You'd have to park at the gas station down the highway and walk to school, making you even more late. It stopped after 20 or so people intentionally showed up late to school and made a mass exodus along the highway, on top of a lot of parents beaching. I bet the gas station owners were pretty pissed about that. 2. Seems like an absurdly asinine policy. Thanks for the correction. No shit. How many cars got towed? At the next financial meeting. So this new rule at the high school has Red Bull sales up 300%. My school banned all balls over a couple of inches in diameter because someone kicked a football through a window during lunch. Most of us that walked home walked past the woods by the golf course and had a ready supply of golf balls as a result. Golf balls were allowed under the new rules due to their size. 3 broken windows in one lunch period later they weren't. There was a sign in the boys' bathroom asking not to bounce balls on walls. You can bet that wall got humped a lot. I played baseball growing up. There was a sign in some cities' dugout that said do not beat off cleats in dugout. Naturally, cleats were scratched off by some players. When I was in kindergarten, during the morning announcements one day they came on and said and please no throwing snowballs. There is a chance you might accidentally get some rocks in them. You could see on the faces of all 20 some students the realization that OMG we could put rocks in them. LOL. Children are such a-holes. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests they completed. We figured out to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We'd set up separate feature tickets for create button, make button blue, make button respond when clicked, implement business logic, display results in grid, allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a one-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive, despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. Ugh, so accurate it hurts. Especially the management loved it part. Ah yes, because every feature is equal and requires the same effort and resources. I love people who think that way. I went to a private school for elementary, where uniforms were strict. If you didn't wear a belt you'd go to the principal's office and he would make you use a shoestring. Well, when he opened the drawer there was like 6 different colors and everybody thought it was really neat, so for a short period of time there was a bunch of kids coming to school with no belt so they could wear their lime green shoestring belt. Don't do anything unless directed by your boss. Any deviation from this will result in write-up termination. This was a very literal directive from upper management that took place after an office incident. Our work is very fluid, and our team alone contained 20 people. Needless to say, productivity hit unfounded lows. Yep, we had this. We couldn't even ask our managers if there was any work to be done. They just emailed us with work every hour. I ended up finishing it within like 10 minutes of the email and was bored out of my brain for the majority of the day. Were you authorized to be bored? Can't ask. Go to wait for the boss to email that one too. A school in my area jacked up the cost of the parking pass. People protested by not buying the pass. Instead they rode the bus. Funny thing is the county really relies on juniors and seniors driving because they don't have enough buses for all the students. The parking pass fee dropped. People drove again. Don't ever let them tell you driving to school is a privilege. They need you to drive to school. Now that's a lesson in economics. Our school made it so you couldn't play dodgeball anymore. So what happened was that the gym teachers came up with this new game called Fireball. The rules are there are balls in the middle of the gym people go on 2 separate teams go for, and if you get hit you're out. If you catch a ball you okay, so it was basically dodgeball. Then Fireball was banned. So now there's this new game called Pinball, which isn't involving the machines unfortunately, but it's basically dodgeball Fireball, but there's bowling pins that need to be knocked over as well. I think they just gave up after a while. A+ gym teachers though. My gym teacher was also the varsity football coach. Very fun guy. Dodgeball was also banned at our school. Enter ball throw. The goal was to throw the ball across the gym. If you got hit you were out. So everyone just had bad aim. Zero tolerance, which means if you are involved with fighting, you will be kicked out. No questions asked. They think it would means no more fighting. Nope. It means if the bully is beating up a kid, no one would step in. For fear of involving with the fight and getting kicked out, no one would snitch because it means the bully will target you next. And now you are involved in fighting and get kicked out. It is a shit policy. I remember reading once on here where some kid who was getting bullied, not even fighting back, fell victim to this. So the parents went into the principal's office to talk to them about it. They reiterated that this is what zero tolerance meant. So the dad turns to their son and says, okay, next time they bully you, absolutely destroy them. Break their faces. What? You can't tell him to do that. You just told my son that no matter what, he's going to get suspended. So this is what he has to do to protect himself. They started a no gum rule that made a lot of junior high kids start a black market for gum. This has probably happened lots of times. One of my teachers spotted a guy chewing and gave him the usual "well, I hope you brought enough for everybody," whereupon he got up with a fistful of gum and started handing it out. She didn't send him to the principal, but she never tried that line again. Haha, my sister did this. She brought a grocery bag full of gum pretty much daily until the teacher finally gave in and joined her side. Overtime is paid in free time instead of money. 3 people quit so far, more people planning to, no new hires to be found. It's probably just a matter of time before this shop closes down. I used to work for a production company that employed a lot of really skilled, award-winning editors. There were producers and executives and directors, but the real money makers, the people who really made the company, were the editors. So the company was basically centered around them. The executives would always order in food for the editors, and the editors would usually eat in their offices while doing their thing. One day the executives decided to cut paid lunches to save money. The editors all thought this was a dong move, so they'd go out for lunch and sometimes stay out for like 3 hours. There was nothing the company could do, really, because these editors were top of their game, and if Warner Brothers heard that the editor they always used had left, they might leave too, so the company couldn't do anything. They saved maybe $15 per person per day, but lost like 4 hours per person per day. Shrug. When trimming a budget, you want to remove things that are the most expensive and provide the least noticeable benefit. So, of course, the first thing to always go is creature comforts, which cost almost nothing and have immense impact on quality of life. I'm perpetually amazed many companies exist. You're assuming they want to remove the things that make sense to remove. What actually happens is they remove the easiest things to remove. That is, low effort, low capital, low time investment. What's the easiest thing a manager could possibly do to save money? Simply stop buying lunch for people. Takes one email. Manager can claim $50,000 annual savings on day 1 to their bosses. This is why layoffs that end up hurting the company financially occur. Labor is the easiest go-to when you have to cut costs quickly. Companies are starting to realize this in manufacturing, at least, and have been focusing on decreasing specific cost rather than fixed. Depends on your industry though. Some have very low fixed labor costs, 5-10%, while others can be higher than 50%. In the 5-10% cases, it might actually save your company money to go hire more people, but many people are very reluctant to do so. My junior high school adopted a policy to not allow kids to loiter in groups of 5 or more, in attempts to crack down on gang mentality. This was freaking junior high. Anyway, me and my group of misfits, 6 of us, were always hanging out during free times, and the principal eventually stopped us and asked us to separate. I had to casually explain to him that we not a group of 6, but 2 groups of 3 that were intermingling. People caught wind and that rule was basically dead. That was one of the few times I had to explain to my father why he was called into the principal's office with me. I'm to bring you in, sir, but I think you'll want to hear this. Your son has more than 3 friends. You really should be ashamed of how you've raised him. Double quote. My high school had a really bad problem with students showing up to class 5 minutes late every day. So they tried 3 different solutions. First, they stopped letting us use lockers. They quickly found out that just meant that nobody brought their books to class. Next, they decided to ban use of the restrooms between class periods. Teachers started complaining about everyone asking for a bathroom pass as soon as class started, so that was abandoned after a week or so. Lastly, one week they made a ton of announcements Monday, Wednesday that all students were to be on time for class. Then on Thursday they suspended any student who was late for insubordination. Turns out that included half the football team. This occurred right before the biggest game of the year. In a town of 4,000 people, this game attracts 16,000. So yeah, they gave that up as well. 5 minuets late every day? You would think that would logically mean increased passing time. My 4 years of high school were full of my school trying out new policies and procedures to use in the future. My sophomore year, my school decided to make tests count for 100% of the grade, and homework count for 0%. But it was still assigned, and as you'd expect, kids did absolutely no homework. The ones that didn't retain information well, or were bad test takers, struggled pretty hard to make the grade without homework padding it. Our failure rate was pretty high that year. Then my junior year, they brought homework grades back and made a new rule that there were no due dates, nor penalties for turning in late work for your 6 weeks. We didn't do quarters. As long as it was before the next 6 weeks started, you were good. This led to students doing no homework until the last few days of the 6 weeks, and teachers had to accept and grade them all before grades were due. This put teachers under immense stress by causing them to work insane hours and spend every hour at home grading, which made them very irritable and more likely to just shove pointless activities and busy work at us until they could finish grading. My high school made students wear these neon t-shirts that read dress code violator if their outfit didn't adhere to the school's policy. They became so popular the school began selling them 1 week later. So, mission accomplished and some school funding? I suppose it still accomplished the school's goal with the added benefit of making money. Maybe it didn't backfire. Maybe this was their goal all along. We implemented the buddy bench for lonely people to sit on and make friends. It was pretty damn expensive and nicely decorated. Someone stole it. As an adult, I love that idea in theory. As a former high school student, I fear for the safety of the poor kids who are so lonely they'll sit on a bench that specifically isolates and highlights their loneliness. High school took all the stall doors off the boys' bathrooms because of graffiti or something. So I started pooping in the bathroom near the office. After a couple of times of the superintendent coming in while I was doing that, all the doors were put back on. Maintain eye contact and nod as the superintendent walks by. My high school attempted to ban trip pants and the like. However, due to a hilariously overlooked typo, the student handbook that got sent to students and parents just said students may not wear pants. We had a good laugh and it made the local news. Unfortunately, this does show the quality of high school I went to wasn't ready for college, haha. Not sure if it was exactly a rule, but my middle school once encouraged kids to not touch each other at all to reduce physical harassment cases, even friendly gestures among friends. All that did was get the kids running around touching each other around campus for about a month and a half, screaming physical harassment. As they did so, to add insult to injury, they did it twice as often in front of the admin who made the presentation about it. If you return a library book late, your parents would have to return it and explain why it's late. It worked about as well as you would think. The rule lasted a few months before they figured it wasn't worth the cost of replacing all the books. How in the name of our sweet baby Jesus did it take a few months for those people to find out that it was not worth it? This was actually in the news a couple of months ago. We had a really hot summer last year, and the boys at my little brother's secondary school were mad that they couldn't wear shorts but the girls could wear skirts. The junior leadership team brought it up at a meeting, and the head teacher jokingly went, "Alright, if the boys want to wear skirts, then let them." A group of boys went to school wearing skirts the next day. Then it wasn't just a group of them. And that, children, is how Scotland was born. I've told this story before, but my high school tried to crack down on people wearing their ties too short, as was the fashion. It got to the stage where anything except completely pristine uniforms would get you a detention, which, coming up to exam season, was one more thing we didn't want to deal with. In protest at what was widely seen as a ridiculous rule, ties started getting longer and longer, 1 foot, 2 feet, 2.5 feet, as long as people could get them. It culminated in one girl sewing 2 ties together into a 5-foot beast that trailed on the floor as she walked, and resulted in the deputy head having a screaming shit fit one day about how disrespectful we all were to the uniform codes. After that, the teachers quietly gave up on the new hardline approach to uniforms, and everything went back to normal. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So, her first week here she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area for tables and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people, elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally, the next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. I worked for a software company that routed all sales, $100,000 to inside sales, while larger orders went to the outside sales teams that worked directly with the customers, until one of the inside sales guys convinced the customer that they didn't need the $2 million software and only needed a $99,000 upgrade. At my college, my dorm used to have this thing called Malt Mondays. Someone would go around knocking on doors at around 8 or 9 PM asking if you wanted to order a 40 ounce. Then they would go on a run to the liquor store and buy them for people that ordered them. We would then all hang out outside drinking 40s and listening to music until security came and told us to take it inside. It was a fun tradition we had, but the dean hated it. He decided to fund his own Malt Mondays, but instead of malt liquor he wanted to draw people in with free chocolate malts. What ended up happening is people who did the regular Malt Mondays and wanted a chocolate malt would just go to that one first, get a free treat and then leave to go and drink 40s. And here I was waiting to read about the chocolate malt W liquor added recipes. When smartphones were starting to become popular, my school had a zero tolerance for phones policy. Having your phone out resulted in an immediate suspension. My phone went off in class my freshman year and I got suspended for that. Keep in mind I was that kid that JAD a 4.0, never broke any rules, never even got a detention, and that was the thing that got me suspended. The school eventually removed the policy because more kids were getting suspended and I am sure that made the school look bad. I had my phone out. A teacher came and grabbed it out of my hand, telling me to go to the principal's office. The problem with this was that I was 27 and working there as a substitute teacher. Not school, but work. My work just recently tried to implement a new attendance policy that didn't last 24 hours. They changed it so that after 2 unexcused absences in a year you were fired. An unexcused absence is any absence or tardiness. I think you were allowed 4 tardies when you didn't give your boss more than 24 hours notice. Lock the doors on the HR person or boss that came up with that. Add it to their one previous absence. Fire them. Fix policy. Rehire to teach them a lesson. The school had assigned parking spaces and if you didn't get your tag for your car and which space was yours at the beginning of the year during registration, it was a nightmare to get. If I didn't get to school 45 minutes before classes started, my parking spot was always taken. I think overall between grade 11 and 12, I got to park in my designated space maybe 9 times. Complaints were made and notices were sent in the school paper, but all they ever did was give a slap on the wrist as it continued. At a former job, software development, there was a football table. People would play reasonably often, but just one game to take a break. One day, management came down to the software engineering floor and saw people playing football in the middle of the afternoon. They declared no football until 4:30 PM. That ended up making it so that everybody knew when there would be other people wanting to play football. So it was much easier to find somebody willing to play and significantly increase the amount of football played at work. My old job had a draconian attendance policy in which if you were at a second late, you got a 1/2-point demerit. If you were an hour late, you got that same 1/2-point demerit. Demerits accrued. 3 equals verbal warning. 4 equals written. Either 5 or 6 was termination. In addition to making for some anxiety-filled employees that made dumb decisions to speed through snowstorms, it also meant if you got stuck in a traffic jam, you might as well just take your time, stop for gas, get breakfast, etc. Same place also had a similar policy that assured the plague spread through the whole place. Say you came to work at 7. By 9 AM you've got a fever and full-blown flu symptoms. If you clock out then, you get a whole point demerit. But if you sit there coughing and shivering and infecting your co-workers for another 2 hours, till your shift was half over, you only got a half-point demerit. A local pharmacy was built on the same street as my school and local pharmacies get robbed a couple times a year where I live. To make our school more secure, they started locking every door and making it punishable by detention for any instance of a student opening an outside door for someone else during school hours. Everyone had to go through the front doors to the lobby to show it and sign in before they got into the actual school. I liked how secure the school was, but when our principal was walking superintendents around to show them our new media production and medical sciences wing of the school, they got locked out after stepping outside to look at an outdoor set. That spot was on the complete opposite side of the school from the front office. During class change they tried knocking on the door to get a student to open it. Everyone ignored them and followed the rules. Those old men and ladies had to walk around the school in 95-degree, 90% humidity weather sweating their suits off. Our principal did commend all the students for following the rules at the next school assembly and said he was proud to show how safe the school was. Cool dude. Not my school but next to mine started locking the back door so people wouldn't go out and smoke during breaks between classes. The day they implemented this, 6 people jumped out of the window on the ground floor by second period. Stepping into the restroom was like walking into a cloud. There was an emergency session of the student council and within a few days everyone owned a vape. School I attended emailed the entire student body to not use Yik Yak because students were being bullied on it. All of the students, myself included, who hadn't heard of the app immediately downloaded it and began using it. My high school's student council decided to use their funds to build a bike cage. The idea was to reduce theft. Bikes go in at the start of the day and are locked up until the end of the day. There would still be racks outside the cage for students to use who needed to leave in the middle of the day. Dentist, cutting class, etc. I told the other council members that the bike cage would cause a huge increase in traffic as what was previously an open bike rack would now have one exit and entrance. Additionally, it would actually increase theft as people could now cut locks in the cage without worrying about someone looking at them through the covered fence. They were planning a chain link fence with slats in it. Guess what ducking happened? Bike theft increased and traffic around the bike cage became a nightmare. I quit the student council after they made that decision. My senior year of high school we got moved into a new school building across from a grocery store. The builders put walls up over the plumbing for water fountains by accident so there was a huge increase in reusable water bottles. And the school put up a vending machine entirely full of water. Now I suppose it's time to mention that this was in Washington state, where you can sell liquor in grocery stores along with anything else. So some freshmen got the bright idea to start stealing vodka from the store, access the street, fill disposable water bottles with it, and sell it to other students. This caused a huge problem with the large population of drunk underclassmen wandering the halls of the school and getting into trouble. Finally the staff got together for a meeting about what to do. Someone suggested banning water bottles, so now students had no access to water during school hours, and everyone was enraged. There were articles written about it and parents complaining. People all over town were talking about how we had a ban on water. They eventually lifted the ban, and the vodka problem resumed. TLDR, my school had kids selling booze in water bottles and banned water. An insane amount of time and hand-wringing went into my office's dress code policy. When the final draft was ultimately released, every department head had a valid reason why their staff should be exempted, so the policy wound up only affecting myself and the guy that insisted on making the policy. I violate this policy on a daily basis. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.